All right, well, it's kind of a changing time in college athletics. We talked about it the other day, but how do you feel like you guys are prepared as a program for kind of a change in a new era in college athletics?
Yeah, I think it's as dynamic a time in college athletics as we've ever faced. But I think the good thing is like this thing. It's not like this thing started just in the last year. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations and dialogue just around what the possibilities are, and I think the hardest part has just been as we look at where we think the plane's going to land. It seems to change every week, just with new information, new decisions at the federal level, states, and how their institutions are leveraging states to try to skirt the rules or get by with certain things. So, but I do think we're prepared. I mean, we've made an investment in athletics here over the last 8.5 years to put ourselves in a position to compete at the highest levels, and we've got a roadmap ahead that I think if we can stick to it will serve us well as we prepare for what this looks like post-house.
And what's that roadmap look like as you guys get closer to that point?
The thing we've always said here at North Texas is that we're trying to put ourselves in the top third when it comes to resourcing our program. So whether that's coaching salaries, travel, and now we're looking at revenue sharing and name, image, and likeness. And so our goal is to try to push as quickly as we can to make sure that we're in the top third of the American when it comes to those things. Obviously, I think one of the challenges for us is when you come into a conference and your revenue distribution until a new TV agreement is reached is less than those that have been in the conference. You are fighting with a short stick. But I do feel like, when you look at what our institutions committed, what our donors have done in the background through our collectives that will hopefully transition to allowing us to build our revenue share dollars going into next year, I do feel there is a roadmap that within the next 2 to 3 years will be, where we plan to be in the top third. So that's the goal. Now we've got to execute a plan. We're going to have, continue to have momentum, have people step up and, be a part of the Mean Green Scholarship Fund, contribute to NIL, capital campaigns, like whatever it is, like we've got to mobilize our donor base and alumni base in a way that we can do that. But I'll certainly say the momentum we've had in the last 6 months to 12 months have been significant in the strides we've made there. And I don't see any reason why we can't continue to build on the successes we've had this last calendar year.
How do you feel like NIL moving in-house into the athletic department would kind of help Texas in a way where right now it's a little bit behind compared to other teams in the conference? How do you feel like that would stack up?
I think there's a couple of things that I think when you think about things coming in-house, like the reality is when it comes in, it's going to be a lot more structured and people are going to start to figure out kind of where the market really is right now when you've got collectives that contribute. And even in the window we're in right now where people are trying to unload collectives that have a stockpile of cash and then you're going into rev share, this is a weird window right now because a lot of the market, this isn't the market. This is a one-time blip where people can kind of overpay to acquire talent by giving them a front-end bonus and then doing rev share in this sequence. But I do think a year from now you'll see this level off. And for the most part, once you get, if House ultimately goes through and they can figure out a way to determine fair market value, third-party collectives and above and beyond the revenue shares are going to be really difficult because you're going to have to prove it's fair market. Somebody's going to determine if I'm going to pay this student athlete X to do Y, does that fit the student athletes following their market value? And so I think you're going to see a lot of that just kind of unbridled stuff that we've seen going on the sides going to be really limited. Therefore, you're going to lean into the revenue share component. And, for us, when you look at schools, even the schools that are going to compete at the $20.5 million, that's one of the things that we're not going to be at that level. But even those schools having to go and distribute that in a systematic way and it not just all going to one or two sports, you're going to see, I think over time, probably just a little bit more parity across, the NCAA. And I think you're going to see teams, while we may not get to the top, there's certainly going to be a sweet spot, I think, in the middle that we can compete and do well in the American Athletic Conference.
Now that you got a little bit further down the line, do you have a more definitive idea of what that number is going to be?
We're looking at that. I mean, I won't know that number, to be honest with you, until one, we get the House case settles and we know that's the direction we're going. And right now there's several things in the works. So we know what we can do from an institution and a current budget standpoint. We also have several things we're pushing initiative-wise that are new revenues, new opportunities. How quickly can we grow outside events and concerts and things that we can control? And then, right now we're also talking with donors who have given to these collectives to see if they'll funnel those same dollars just through us so that we can grow that pool and that pot. So we're probably still a few months away from knowing the final number. But I can tell you our goal right now is hopefully in the next year we find ourselves in the middle to top third of the American this next year, and we're going to continue to push every year after that until we find ourselves in that top third. That's always been the goal.
Realignment's always a topic of discussion. How do you feel like the American kind of lines up with these newer conferences like the new Pac-12 conference, and maybe even the Mountain West? How do you feel like the American is a good spot for North Texas?
I mean, I think the American, it's certainly currently the most stable. I know that can always change, with just one or two schools having a different approach to how they want to pursue their athletic futures. But, I would say the American's positioned well. We've got a great group of schools. We've got a strong media partner in ESPN. I think when you look to some of the other conferences, there's some unknowns. There's still some pieces to fill. So I think as long as we can come out of this thing together, I think when you look at opportunities for us to really create some separation in how we operate and try to strive to be more like the bottom end of the Power Four, I think it's a great spot for us right now.
So NIL will move in-house when this all goes through is the point?
Yes.
And then I was curious when you start sharing revenue, that's going to be a significant number with athletes. How is that going to impact what you guys can afford as an athletic department across the board? And I know we've seen some staffing cuts at other places, other schools. I mean, what's the impact going to be when you guys go down that road?
Yeah, I mean, we're always assessing and having to adjust our approach to athletics. And I think the beauty of this is it's the blessing and the curse of not getting a full revenue share with our media partner. When you look now, like a lot of these institutions that have been here, they've built out whole staffs and infrastructure that now that they need to go create revenue sharing buckets, they're having to figure out how to reallocate and move it over. Right now, if we can generate new and establish a base, anything new that we have in the future, at least in the short term, unless something else changes in the landscape, our intent is to take every new revenue we got and push it into that bucket. And I think for us, while that may take us a little bit of time to get there, we're not sitting here today having to talk about massive reallocations or drastic changes to how we fund programs. Not saying that at some point down the road we don't have to look at those things, but our hope is we can take a systematic approach right now and give our teams a chance to compete for championships, but also position ourselves to where our coaches have the resources they need to go out and recruit the talent that can compete at the American Conference level.
So you feel like you guys can be competitive in this new environment?
We're competitive right now. So I feel like if with the right coaches, and we've got coaches who have done an amazing job, and you take what we're doing in basketball today. We're not the highest funded revenue sharing NIL program in the American, and both teams have a chance to finish in the top two in the conference, which that's only happened 3 times in American Athletic Conference history. We've got 2 teams right now that are 20-plus wins. First time in school history, but we're positioned well in the American Athletic Conference. You look at strides in football and our ability to compete with the teams who we know, we haven't won all those games, but we're competing in those games with what we have right now. And so our full intention is to compete at the highest level in the American. I feel we're there, but I do think as we continue to push ahead in revenue sharing and NIL opportunities for student athletes, if we can do that and give our coaches a chance to compete for talent, we'll find ourselves competing well within the conference structure right now.
What are your plans with contract extensions for guys like Ross Hodge and Jason Burton to kind of keep them here and retain them from getting poached at higher levels like we've seen in the past?
I mean, my plans are that they'll be here for a long time. It's a dynamic world we live in. I mean, you've got constant movement this time of year. I think everybody is a little nervous about what's going to happen, but I believe in both Coach Hodge and Coach Burton. We extended Coach Burton last year. Whatever, as we wrap this season up, we're going to evaluate and do what we need to do to try to retain them. I think not only are the two of them proven in what they can do on the competitive side and by winning games, which is ultimately how they're measured, the best part of it is day-to-day working with them. I mean, those are two of the best human beings you can work with. They certainly pour into the culture side. That's what a lot of fans, you get to see a little bit of it through social media and the amazing work that our creative team does every day. But when you see how these guys go about building a team and building a culture, and you're doing this in an environment where you don't get the benefit of being able to build that over 3 or 4 years. You're literally having to create that in a year. Those guys are special in how they do that. And so my intent's to do everything we can to try to keep both of them here for as long as we can.
You mentioned that you don't know the final numbers yet for how much exact revenue, but do you have any ideas or outlook on just how per sport, how the budget will be allocated once revenue share starts?
I mean, we're still working through that. I think, as you look across the landscape, there's still a lot of moving targets. You've seen some decisions made with, some of the Title IX pieces that got rescinded when the new leadership stepped in. I think when you look at how all schools are approaching it, there's a little bit of a nuance to how everybody's taking a look at that. And so, I think one of the things when we talk to colleagues around the country at all levels almost every day. I mean, I had 2 conversations today with ADs that, just picking their brain on where they think they're possibly going to be and land and how they're determining percentages. And so we haven't finalized that yet, but I can tell you it's not going to be too far from somewhere between where the House settlement percentages came out, and you hear a lot of schools talking about looking at how we take in revenues at North Texas. So when you look at the categories the House was based on, figuring out how that actually came in at North Texas, and then that would be how we determine how we distribute those funds. And so it's not finalized yet, but we should have that hopefully within the next couple of months once the House case settles and we dig in a little more with what everybody else is doing.
Where does that percentage? Are you talking like percentage of what your guys' revenue is, or?
Yeah, so look, like if you were to take the buckets of like ticket sales and concessions and royalty and licensing, those things that you can assign to a very specific sport, whatever that is, that breakup is, and how that comes out. Some schools are taking that approach. Some are going, more along the lines of 75, 15, 5, 5, which is what the House case was, the formula that they use to determine back payments. So, I think you're seeing a lot of institutions, just because there is nobody's come out and said this is how you can do it. Everybody's got a little bit of window to figure out with their general counsels what's comfortable and what we feel we can move forward with.
Are there any new updates with the athletic center renovations and possible other facility renovations in the near future? So,
athletic center, we've had tremendous momentum there. I mean, we're a hair over $6 million in commitments towards phase 1. Our goal is to get to somewhere in the $9.5 to $10 million range. We're still working with architects through the design process right now to determine what the final budget would be. But we're anticipating we're going to need to be somewhere in the $9.5 to $10 million raised before we can move forward. Our goal of having that done by May 31st, I feel like we're in a really good spot. We've had a number of 7-figure, 6-figure asks in the last 2 weeks that I feel really good about. And so, assuming we can land a few of those, I feel like, come May 31st, we should be at a place where we can, hopefully go to campus and the board and seek permission to move forward in breaking ground on phase 1.
You know, you mentioned that this is the first season that men's and women's basketball both hit 20-plus wins. Just what does that kind of milestone mean to the success of the basketball programs, but also the university as a whole?
Hey, I think we're all measured by success. And, I think anytime, the one thing that's always somewhat eluded North Texas is the ability to have football, men's, women's basketball at a high level at the same time. I mean, we've always kind of had when one's good, one's not, and we've never had the momentum of being able to get all three of those trekking, down the same track. And so to have both basketballs right now in a position where they're doing that, we've seen progress on the football front and super excited about next season and where we think, that season could unfold. I think I'm super optimistic about where we're at. And, I do think it's one thing when you look at the things we preached about North Texas being able to take the next step in our journey as a Division I athletic program. The one area we can win all the games we can build all the nice facilities we can have an institution that's a Carnegie Tier 1 research institution that, 47,000 students strong. All the boxes we can check are significant, but the one that matters most when you look at how do we position North Texas in the future is we've got to have people dialing into viewership, TV, and those ratings, and we've got to get our donor numbers up. We got to get attendance up, and we got to get season tickets up. Because at the end of the day, the people who make those decisions around realignment, you can stack up and have a successful athletic program in the win-loss column, but if you don't have eyeballs that TV's willing to pay for, you'll be left sitting on the side. And so that's why we continue to preach, the significance of us last year crossing 2,000 donors for the first time in history, and we're now last year we finished at 2,400. So we had a 105% increase in number of donors just last year. We can push that to 3,000 or 3,200 this year. Keep making strides towards that. That's significant. I think when you look at viewership, I've seen, been able to look at metrics from some of these firms that assess value for institutions in the realignment process. It does not surprise me. We stack up in the top 3 or 4 in the American Athletic Conference in every category, including win-loss currently, and we're 2 years in, and we're not at the funding level we want to be. But the two that we drastically fall short in are in donor engagement, alumni engagement, and TV viewership. And so, when I tell alumni all over the place, like, selfishly, I want everybody to be dialed in because it's good for us. But more importantly, I want alums to be proud of their institution. So, like, even if you can't make a game, make sure it's on the TV, make sure you're on your phone. Like, whatever you can do to help us move the needle on the engagement metrics is going to be better for North Texas. It's good for us in the short term because we have crowds and home court and home field advantage. We have more resources to distribute and grow and try to catch up to the top end of the American. But in the long term, it's a big part of the equation. If down the road there is another door that might open, we're going to have those two things in a drastically different place if we want to be ready for that opportunity.
You've seen people kind of give feedback throughout different strategies in marketing and promoting games. How do you feel like UNT stacks up with the rest of the conference, and not just promoting games, but building a brand as an athletic department as a whole?
Yeah, we're always open. We can do a lot of things better. I'm never going to shy away from we've got this thing figured out. One thing I will say is I know, being with our group and our team on a daily basis, we tackle marketing aggressively and we talk about it all the time. We're talking about how do we engage students. We're working with dorms. We're working with fraternities and sororities. We're working with campus life. We've spent a significant amount of money with the Maniacs to mobilize and to kind of have a ground game for campus and trying to get students engaged. We're dialing in a lot more, and I can tell you these are the things people don't see, but the ability for us to utilize metrics, social media, very specific target marketing, like we can we can sit here and talk about the ROI we've had on being able to be smarter in how we invest dollars. The part about that some people that are already in the boat don't see is they may not be getting those things because they're already dialed in. And so, it's one thing for us to, our charge to continue to find new ways to connect with the community, with students, and with our alumni base, that we're going to be relentless in that. And it's not always the way that fans want you to do it. It's not always as easy as they think it is. And there's things they don't see that they assume because they don't know that we're not doing it. And I think a lot would be shocked if they would just pick up the phone, call, email. Like, we'd be happy to share the stuff we're trying, because a lot of the things that I get feedback on, our team's doing that every day. And so does it mean we stop? No. Does it mean we don't kind of pivot and figure that out a new way or a new path or a new option to try to connect with people? We want to do that. I can tell you when you're in a county like Denton County, which is one of the fastest growing in the entire country, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be significant opportunity for us. And you're going to have a boatload of people moving into the area who may not be North Texas alums or grads, but if they're college sports fans, we're going to be the closest to them. So how do we continue to just make sure we're visible, we're present? And I think, look back to this last year, one of the great events we did, the Nightmare on Elm Street downtown. I think anytime we can do stuff to pull the community, partner with other organizations, working with local school districts. Like, we've got a lot of strategies that are in the works. And again, do we hit them all 100%? No. But I am proud of the work our team has done, because I do feel like we're aggressively charging, because we all want the same thing. We're not sitting here with our head in the sand just hoping people show up. Like, you got to fight for people's attention in DFW, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
You guys are adding a pretty significant chunk of change that you're going to have to, raise to distribute, money to players. Do you feel good about your ability to have enough to go around to all the initiatives you want to do with facilities, with NIL, with growing the program just in general?
I do. I do think the one thing, though, it does make you do, and I'll be honest, like our athletic center expansion, our intent was to target the whole $45 to $50 million project and get it done at one time. NIL hits, and then we're asking donors to contribute above and beyond their contributions so we can participate in that game. And so we made a decision to how can we go ahead and move forward with, break this up into 2 pieces, get part of it done today, that the cheapest construction you can ever get is today. Tomorrow's only going to be more expensive. And so let's go ahead and break it up, get phase 1 done while it's cheapest to do it, still tackle NIL, and we'll deal with phase 2 when we get to a place where we can do that. And so it does force you to maybe look at, having a new bucket of concern that we've got to fund. You've got to be smart. And but I tell people all the time, the world of college athletics is just like we open up a puzzle. And every piece in that puzzle box is important to get to the final picture and the final product. And you can't just say we're no longer going to do facilities and take, a third of your puzzle away and think it's going to be good enough to compete in Division I. And so you can't just say we're only going to go facilities and not participate in NIL and revenue share and expect to have a competitive program. And so it's all important. We've got to do everything we can to make sure that we put all those pieces in place. Some of them may be delayed or sequenced a little different, but we're going to continue to charge ahead on all fronts.
Anything else? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.